get out and see.
I was having trouble.
I'm not sure anyone watching.
I just get to good at driving.
Oh, hi, Greg. And a lot of people are. Hi, nice. Good to see you.
I got stuck in the middle of a convoy of all the dump trucks and then the mines hauling out a couple of big flatbeds full of equipment and then they're following a little Subaru that won't go over 35 miles an hour. Yeah, you can say, I'm never gonna make it there.
That's the way life goes.
It just goes to show you how complex billing is, because I think we had to do
Breaking the weather anyway to get up here.
Yeah, barely. You were, I felt last yesterday. This is our LC. I know it went to the state board. But it was south.
Is that with everybody yesterday? Okay.
No, I think so you live over close to a bridge station?
Rest of the crew?
Why does it really take off?
That was good.
She just said sit anywhere and you came over here.
And just.
Yeah, that's what I had to do.
The next hour.
Maybe the next hour.
It's an hour and a half.
Yeah, right?
So, yeah, if I can push your staff.
Well, I have no one who knows assessment. I have little time slots, you know, we can't go to the county's parking.
Don't mess with my schedule.
Yeah, don't pretty much. That's a good answer. Almost don't mess with me. Because then I'm on to dogs next. That's exactly what that means, and hi, I'm Lori Beckman. That's good for the county, but it's much for us. Douglas.
Election's
For the fire. I'm with the, no, I don't do about supervisors.
You're good. Just start.
I didn't have to start travelers with it. It was like, oh, different, this worked out for me today, but I did come to Fairtown yesterday.
That yesterday, it seems like so long ago.
I know when it was
Yesterday was a long
breakfast.
day.
I don't mind.
I know, I was laughing going, Charlene and I went to high school together. So it's really funny when she sent the notice, oh, you're asking us to do Carson City on our board day. It's kind of probably a no. And she said, well, you go to Minton? And I'm like, okay, I'm 7. Hello?
I'm not wearing my string.
Tell me about it.
Well, it'll be 19 years in July. Almost 30 years. Computers. A job. Yeah. Because the other counties. The state board of equalization was a gubernatorial appointment. New governor, we don't have any, but it is West.
We just don't.
Oh, yes, yes, I do.
And 2 others.
My I know.
Just talk about it, yeah, just let me know when you're.
Right on.
But like I said, it's a budget.
I think you had a meeting.
Delay.
Is that counting the ballot?
Yeah.
Once in a blue moon.
Yes, absolutely, which is what I think. I would have 11 o'clock on Monday.
The best part is
Perfect, my friend. And Fred Holmes. And then let me also know to Denise. It may not even really involve, I'll reach out to Denise.
As he's, yeah, I started as essentially as,
Yeah, I'll give it a shot. Yeah, if not, I'll put the odds in. I'll do it. Yep. Because I had to get your time first, yours and my time first, and then I'll add. Let's work on us first. Okay. Sounds good. Thanks so much. Okay.
yes, on the maximum allowable tax rate for the district, you can have room to go, but because you have to, the total overall combined rate is 264, and with the others.
Taking everybody, it's a few minutes after.
Yeah.
Yeah?
That makes it even.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Lorinda Wickman. I'm the past president of NACO and also a commissioner from my county. And because I'm past president, I get to be the chair of the Emeritus Committee this year. I'd like to say good morning, and on behalf of NACO's Committee of the Emeritus and the Nevada Association of Counties and staff, we would like to welcome you to this workshop. And thank you very much for tuning in. The NACO Committee of the Emeritus is comprised of former county commissioners who serve in an advisory role to the NACO Board of Directors. Our Emeritus Committee puts their institutional knowledge to work and helps us with things like training and mentoring for the new commissioners that are coming in. And this is the second workshop in a series of 4 that the committee will be hosting. Today's topic is understanding county finance. Being stewards of our county's budgets is perhaps the most important job that we do as commissioners. And of course, it is a complicated process. Some of us are more successful than others. Our goal today is to provide an overview of the revenues that come in, expenditures that go out, and including those that are mandated, as well as an overview of the budget process and some best practices. We also have some detailed information from the state on their role in this process. And then finally, we have one of our state's economists to give us a bigger picture view of some projections and trends in our state. As a housekeeping item, before we start, the workshop qualifies as attendees for the Certified Public Officials credits, which is coordinated through UNR. Please fill out a form, and they are scattered about across the table. There's some by the door as well, or email Amanda if you're on the video remote, and she will fill one out for you. Also, we are recording this workshop, so keep in mind that you are being recorded. That means you have to censor dirty words. That's what I have to do. Finally, if you are on the phone or video, make sure you mute your device if you are speaking. That was timely. Finally, our format today will be, we will hear from our 4 presenters and ask you to hold your questions until the end. Following the presentations at about 11 a.m. or so, we will have a question and answer period, and we'll try to give that as much time as possible. Our first presenter today is Washoe County Treasurer Tammy Davis. Tammy has been with Washoe County Treasurers. That's going to be fun. Someone who needs to mute. If you are on the phone or video conferencing in, would you please mute your phones? We get an echo back. As I said, our first presenter today is Tammy Davis, and she was with the Washoe County Treasurer's Office for the last 18 years. She served as the Chief Deputy Treasurer prior to her appointment and subsequent election as Treasurer. Tammy is also currently serves as the president of the Association of County Treasurers of Nevada and secretary of the County Fiscal Office Association of Nevada. Thank you for being here, Tammy.
Sure. I believe you want me at the podium?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I've been asked today to share a little bit about county revenues, which is a very broad topic, and we have just a few minutes, so I'm going to be speaking quickly. I want to leave plenty of time for the people who will follow me because I know they have great information. So this isn't intended to be comprehensive, but hopefully it'll give you a general idea of the type of money that comes into the county. Most of these revenues flow through the treasurer's office, so while I may not have a lot of depth of knowledge about some of them, at least I'm familiar with what they are. So bring up the PowerPoint. Okay, and go to the first slide. At a very high level, generally, county revenues come in the form of either taxes or fees. And there's a lot of dispute and confusion sometimes about what the difference between those is, but in my 10 minutes, I'm not even gonna get into that. Just know that the answer may depend on who you talk to, and there have been court cases fought over that. And there are occasions when I'm looking at law that I think they're used interchangeably. Whether that's intended or not, I don't know. Just in general, county revenues are as diverse as our counties are. We provide a lot of services to our citizens, and our revenue sources are very unique and different. They have many layers. There are some taxes that are collected at different levels of government. There are exemptions that can affect these revenues, depending on what the rules are about how those exemptions are applied. Some revenues can be used for general use. They can go into the county's general fund and be used for whatever purpose the commissioners determine. And then some of those revenues are restricted, depending on how they come in. How revenues are allocated is a great source of fun for those of us who do that, because there are some pretty complicated formulas that go into that. And so when you think about all the different revenues that counties have, it can seem like a big puzzle. There are a lot of pieces, a lot of layers, but hopefully today we can go through just some basics and help you make a little bit of sense about those. And as I'm covering the basics, keep in mind this will be a very general, high-level overview, but there is a lot of good information. If you have one or two of these sources you want to learn more about, the Department of Taxation's website is a great resource. Your county treasurer should know at least a starting point for you if you have a revenue source you want to learn about. Your county staff, and you'll hear more from someone on county staff and the information they have, and then your budget documents can be a great source of information about the revenues that counties receive. There are many ways I could have grouped these to talk about them today, but what I came up with that I hope will be helpful is grouping them by kind of how they're received. So we'll start with county revenues that are actually collected by other agencies. Two of these that I have listed here, the sales tax and the supplemental government services tax, are actually collected by other agencies, and a portion of them is considered in consolidated tax, so keep that in mind. We'll be talking about them later. But the portions I wanted to talk about in this area is the fact that under both of the sales tax and supplemental government services tax can be levied at the county level, and so some counties may have them, some may not. So they're not necessarily consistent across the state. For sales tax, we have a statewide sales tax rate of 6.85% that you would pay in any county. If you purchase an item, you're going to pay that rate. But in all but 5 of our counties, you will have additional rates that are levied. Some of those are levied by the county. And what I wanted to point out about those is if your county levies a specific rate, that money will come back to your county and not be distributed as the general rate is. Those can be used for things like schools, tourism, mass transportation. In Washoe County, we have a special sales tax for flood control. There's a county that has a swimming pool
component to their sales tax rate. So those revenues can be varied depending on what you at the county level have determined you need them for. Some of them are voter approved. Moving on to the supplemental GST, that stands for Government Services Tax. That's a tax that is levied based on the value of your vehicle. It's collected by the Department of Motor Vehicles at the time you register your car. And there is a 4-cent rate that is standard across the state. But counties have the ability to levy an additional rate up to 1 cent at their discretion. And so again, if your county, I think Clark and Churchill are the two counties that take advantage of that. Those are revenues that would come back to them. And those, I believe, are restricted revenues. The fuel tax is something that has a different rate depending on which county you're in. I can tell you if I gas my car here in Carson, it costs me quite a bit less than if I go to Reno and do it. That is because in Washoe County, our fuel tax is indexed, and I know that's a hot topic for commissioners right now. And so I won't dig into that too far, but those rates vary county to county. That tax is collected through the DMV and has restricted uses as well. The lodging tax is a tax you pay when you rent a hotel room. Those can be collected by your county fair board. In Washoe County, they're collected by our Reno Sparks Convention and Visitors Authority, and a portion of that does come back to the county. So all of those are components that are collected elsewhere. They get funneled back to the county in one form or another. At the federal level, there are a lot of ways you can receive funds. The one I wanted to mention that you may hear the most about is PILT, which stands for Payment in Lieu of Taxes. That basically is in recognition that we have a lot of federally owned land in Nevada, and when it's federally owned, it's exempt from property taxes. And so that impacts our revenues that we get from property taxes. And so the federal government has set aside this payment in lieu of taxes that comes to the counties. It is subject to appropriation, so through those recessionary years, there was not always an assurance we would receive those funds. But so far, I believe they are still in place and continuing. Grants can be received not only from the federal government, but from many agencies. But I just wanted to point out for grants, you have to go out and look for those. They have restricted uses generally, and they have special reporting and counting for the most part that has to happen with those. So included those here, and I'm moving quickly because there's a lot of information, down to revenues that are collected at the county level. We collect a lot of fees at the county level. Those can include marriage license fees, building license fees, gaming license fees, and I point that out because those are also collected at the state level. And so when I talked about the different layers of revenue, it can get a little confusing sometimes. Counties collect permits for building and moving. If you move a mobile home, you have to pay a permit at the county level. We also have things like in Washoe County, we have a regional jail. And so if we house prisoners for other agencies there, we are entitled to receive incarceration fees for that. Our county clerks and recorders collect fees that serve as county revenues. So the last two revenue sources that I listed there are probably for all of our counties two of the major sources of revenue. So I pulled them out to dig into a little bit more detail. Consolidated tax, you will often hear referred to as C-tax. And I don't want to get into much detail. This is handled through the Department of Taxation, but it's a distribution method that was implemented in 1997. It actually encompasses 6 different tax types that are collected at the state level and then once a month distributed to local government agencies. And just so that you're aware of what is included when you get a C-tax distribution, it includes cigarette taxes, liquor taxes, basic government services tax, which again is a tax based on the value of your vehicle. It includes real property transfer tax, which is actually collected by your county recorders. When there is a document recorded that transfers ownership of property, there's a tax attached to that, and a portion of that comes back to the county. And then the final two, which are both city-county relief taxes, make up a component of the statewide 6.85% sales tax. And there is a portion of that that's dedicated and comes back into this distribution method and is allocated to local government agencies, including the county. The rates that I've noted here are not the full rates for those taxes. They're the rates that are brought in and allocated back in some part to the counties. And then finally, the tax that's nearest and dearest to my heart as a county treasurer, because this is where I spend the majority of my time, is property tax. This is another major source of revenue for counties. In Washoe County, it makes up 50% of our general fund revenue. C-tax is about 30% right now. Those percentages vary county to county, and they also will change through the years as the economy changes. We have a property tax cap that's in place that's impacting those revenues. As we see growth, we don't necessarily see our property tax revenues grow. But they remain a vital revenue source for counties. And I could spend the whole day talking about this topic, but just at a very high level, property taxes are ad valorem, meaning they're based on the value of the property that's being taxed. This is one of the taxes that is collected at more than one level of government. So we have locally assessed property taxes, which are collected at the county level, and then centrally assessed property taxes, which are collected at the state level through the Department of Taxation. Both of those levels have two tax rolls, the secured tax roll, which you may also hear called the real property tax roll, and it encompasses the value of all the land and anything that's permanently affixed to it. The unsecured tax roll, also referred to as the personal property tax roll, taxes things that are a little more movable, so like mobile homes, aircraft, and the furniture and fixtures that businesses use that can really change a lot from one year to the next. And then centrally assessed also handles the taxation. First, let me go back. Centrally assessed taxes property that crosses county lines. So things like railroads, power lines, gas lines, things like that that aren't necessarily contained in one county. And that also includes private car lines, net proceeds of minerals, which has to do with our mining industries, and construction work in progress. These taxes are all based on the value of the property being taxed, and then various government agencies have the authority to levy a tax rate, and that tax rate is applied to the valuation, and basically that's how you come up with the property tax. There are a whole lot of other rules around that and a lot of calculations that occur. That's basically how that works at the highest level. Some of these tax rates are voter approved, some of them are restricted, and then we also have, for instance, your county general tax rate can be used as commissioners determine their general fund would be spent. So that is a very quick, high-level review of county revenues. Again, there's a lot of detail behind any one of those and a lot of resources if you want to dig into any of them. And I've provided my information in case anyone ever has a question that they might want to discuss. I am more than willing to talk to anyone about taxes and specifically property taxes. Thank you.
Thank you, Tammy. That was a lot.
It was
really
a lot
quick.
of talk.
Our next presenter is Josh Foley, who is the Comptroller and Administrative Services Director for Lyon County. Josh has been overseeing the budget process in Lyon County for many years and is an expert in county finance. Josh is also a certified public accountant and also serves on the executive board of the Nevada Public Agency Insurance Pool and the Nevada Public Agency Compensation Pool.
We'll go ahead and start with the PowerPoint. I put it together so you wouldn't have to stare at me the whole time. I really appreciate that. And my presentation, they've asked me to speak on how the county budgeting process works. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide, and we'll just get through it. I'm gonna read some of the slides. Some of them I'm gonna count on. Hopefully everyone has the ability to read and knows how to read. So we'll go on to the next one. So basic elements of your budget process.
Just a minute, Judge. Please, if you're on the phone or on the video, mute your devices on your end so we don't get the echo. Thank you.
Thank you. So basically, the budget process is not a sexy process. It's not a fun process. Everyone goes through. Actually, it's really fun when you get to add staff in your department. But besides that, it's not really exciting. So we start off our basic elements with departments making budget requests. They put together what new staffing they have dreamed of the last year or two. Then they put together their line item expenditures. Revenue projections, we put those together in fund balance projections. We should do that first. That's ideal. You start off with the revenues. Unfortunately, with our nice property tax system the way it is, that doesn't always work out that way. So normally we would do that first, but today we do our budget request first, and then we figure out what revenues we're going to get. And we all wait with eager anticipation for Terry Rubald to my name. Oh, I'm sorry. For the Department of Taxation, who has the crystal ball and knows everything, to tell us how much our property taxes are going to be. Once we get done with that process, we just try and figure out how the darn things balance. You know, we have this much in revenues coming in, and we have a lot more in expenses that have been, or expenditures that have been asked for. So we have to balance it, and we have to usually reduce budget requests. And then the Board of Commissioners approves a balanced budget. That's always when we give a sigh of relief. Let's go ahead and go to the next one. So different counties do the process a little bit differently. I've seen counties where they actually go in and look line item by line item in every official's budget and make them justify how many pins they buy for the budget. I've seen other counties where they just do a presentation, kind of like this, a PowerPoint, and they hit the highlights of a couple of funds, and the board says, that looks good, thank you very much, we trust our staff, and you move on with the process. It can be anywhere in an airplane from the 30,000 foot level down to ground level in the woods. There's no right or wrong methodology here. If you have competent staff that is in place for that, you may be able to get a little higher up in the air. If your staff is new or you've had some challenges there, you may need to get a little bit closer to ground level. So let's go to the next one. Revenues. These are my favorite things because it means I get money. So let's go ahead and move on to the next one. She's already talked about property taxes. Just a couple of things that we need to note. The budget on property taxes, Department of Taxation, I'm not going to mention any names even though they're in the room. They make us match the property taxes in the budget to what the state projections are. They're usually very, very close to what you actually, to actual results. And we don't get the information until March 25th. Now, a lot of us like to have our budgets done before that. I used to like to have them done by March 15th. It doesn't work that way anymore now that we have the tax cap. We'll move on to the next slide if you would. Consolidated and gas taxes. These are projected. The Department of Taxation is very nice. They give us a projection every year, actually two of them, and actual results change. It's kind of like your financial advisor. What's the economy and the stock market going to do the next year? Well, we're asking the Department of Taxation to project not just the next 6 months, but a year after that. And as we've seen in the stock market, things go up and down on a regular basis, so it's very difficult to project. The nice thing about this is we can tell the Department of Taxation, thank you very much, but we're going to go with our own revenue projections, and they allow us to do that. We can put our own projections in, but we have to be careful. If we don't match, you better have a really good reason and say, you know, I'm in my county and I have a little better understanding of this or that, so I think it's going to be higher or lower. And so you just have to be careful, because if you go out on a limb, you're going to pay for it the next year. And that's not a fun place to be for any of us. One thing I want to note, and Tam did a great job of going through where consolidated taxes come from, a big component, the lion's share of that is sales tax. That's where the majority of it comes from. And you may have heard of the Internet Sales Tax Freedom Act at the federal level. Basically, interstate commerce, which is what they regulate, they have made it illegal for us to collect our sales taxes on those. We used to get them all the time from the retailers because they didn't have that option, but, in the recent past, I don't know, 15, 20 years is recent, isn't it? We've had internet sales that have increased and increased, and a lot of the taxes that the counties used to get, they used to build your budgets on, is no longer there, and is permanently not there anymore, and the more sales that happen on the internet, the less you're gonna get in revenues to the county side. So just keep that in mind. Other revenue pieces that we have to project, charges for services,